¿Qué pasa, gente? We're just here in Nashville, Tennessee, living the dream. It's another beautiful morning, and we're gonna hit you with a fresh new episode of Dos Guiris sin Guia. Stick around and check it out. So today, we are talking about a much promised topic. We talked about this in a previous episode, that we would go more in depth on this particular verb because it is just it's got so many uses and it can be very confusing. But anyway, without further ado, the verb is quedar. So yeah, we're gonna be getting into that today. Andres, you got anything to say at the beginning about quedar?
I just want to know, in your humble opinion, is there anything that quedar can't mean?
Oh, very few things. There are not a whole lot of things that quedar cannot mean. A really very wide-ranging set of definitions for quedar.
Yeah, dude, I think historically, or at least anciently, at one point it actually did signify just everything. I believe it was the word that stood for universe.
It must be something like that.
Able to isolate it to 12 or 15 meanings.
Oh, it's going to be a great episode today. Super exciting episode of Dos Guiris sin Guia. We're going to be getting into the nitty gritty. I should not be peaking the audio like that. We're going to be getting into the nitty gritty.
Quedar is like the om.
Yeah, it's the om. It's just the thing you chant. Quedar, quedar. So the first definition I'm going to hit you guys with is, I think, the most simple. It's the simplest, and it's the one that I learned before any of these other meanings, and it is just to be left or to remain. So if you ask someone, ¿cuántos quedan? Or ¿cuántos te quedan? You're just asking, how many are left, or how many do you have left? So I would say that is probably number one definition. Quedar, to be left. Or to be left or to remain. So then after quedar, the very, very similar definition of this is if you put se on the end. The reflexive se, meaning you do something to yourself or you're asking someone else to do something to themselves. So a very easy example would be quédate allí, stay there. And it's very similar to the to be left or the to remain definition, but it's just saying leave yourself there or remain there yourself. So it's just adding the reflexive bit to really the first definition, so it's very, very similar. But Andres has another example of when you can use this quedarse in conjunction with another verb. Can you explain that, Andres?
Okay, folks, so this, the verb we just heard, like quedarse, to stay or to remain, as Mike explained, can be used with a gerund afterwards. And it practically means the same thing, but the focus is on the action that the gerund is doing. And I'll give you an example, and I'm going to show it to you two different ways, but hopefully you can understand what the meaning is, and then we'll do our best to kind of like translate it roughly. So, me quedé 8 horas viendo series de Netflix. All right, so I said me quedé 8 horas viendo, there's our gerund, series de Netflix. Or you could say it side by side with quedar and the gerund right afterwards. So me quedé viendo series de Netflix 8 horas. Okay?
And then you would not need the por 8 horas. You would just say, because you use the gerund, you don't need the por, correct?
Right, okay. Yeah. Me quedé 8 horas viendo, me quedé viendo 8 horas or 8 horas at the end. Nice. And so pretty much, if you haven't already figured this out on your own, it means like to stay 8 hours watching series on Netflix, which I would equate to I kept watching, or pretty much I was watching. That's the tricky thing about this verb that we brought up last week, is so often it just means to be in English. Whenever we try to make like a really good, authentic translation, we're reduced to using the verb to be. But in Spanish, it's like this really versatile verb itself that has a lot of other meanings on top of it. And so when you hear it, it can be tempting to like get a bit overwhelmed. There's another verb like this that me and Mike have talked about, probably not on this episode or in the show, but echar.
I think we had one about HR, maybe not.
Yeah, if you don't know anything about echar except for like the one meaning, then you come to Spain, you're going to feel mad overwhelmed because it pops up left and right. And so quedar's a little bit like that. But sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there.
No, that's awesome. So this is the thing about quedar, just like Andres was saying, is a lot of these are very, very similar definitions, and they're just kind of very slightly different contexts. Where it gets confusing is when we try to translate it into English, more so than actually just thinking in Spanish, is because when we translate it in English, well, this quedar means to be, this quedar means to become, this quedar means to be located, but like, when you think about it in terms of Spanish, they're all similar, not all of them, but most of them are pretty similar definitions of quedar. So I'm going to give one more example of quedarse, is just to stay in a type of lodging, and that's really, really similar to the other quedarse, which is just quédate ahí, stay there, stay there yourself. But then if you say, nos quedamos en un hotel en las montañas durante la tormenta, like we stayed in a hotel during the storm. So it's still talking about where you are and your physical location, and it's just reflexive, so instead of talking about something else, you're talking about yourself. But to me, that's very, very similar definition to the other ones of Quedar. It's just slightly different.
Yeah, to my best judgment, I'm pretty sure that those are the same, and one just includes like more information about the actual location, right? Like he actually tells you precisely where. It's just only saying there. Whereas in the subsequent example, it's like we stayed at a hotel.
Yeah, and it's like you could say, oh yeah, our lodging was at a hotel. Like there's different ways you can translate it into English, but when you think about it in Spanish, it's like the same. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So here's one that is a little bit strange, or it's at least stranger than what we've heard up to this point, and it's when something turns out a certain way. So for the people wondering or that have studied Spanish and they're thinking that should be salir, like no me sale bien, right? Like whenever I try to speak Spanish, no me sale bien, and that could be like it just turns out poorly or bad. But we're going to use quedar here, and it's quite common, especially when you're talking about something that like you cooked, or something that usually like involves other people's opinion. So like if we were talking about exposition earlier, if you did a piece of art and then everybody else was looking at it, how they appraised your art, that would decide whether or not te ha quedado bien o te ha quedado mal. And the example I have here is la paella me quedó muy rica, right? So that's like, my paella turned out really delicious.
Yeah.
And don't say la paella se me quedó muy rica. I did that for a long time. I think they got it. I mean, there's not an intelligible other next step to make. It's just like, all right, he's trying to say.
He accidentally said the extra say.
But then you're just getting wordy, and it sounds verbose, and it's wrong. So
I would think that it seems to me if you add the say, it would almost be taking less credit for you making the paella, and it'd be like, oh, the paella turned out good to me. Like, could you say that if you ordered it at a okay, never mind. I'm not going to get into that. Too nitty gritty. Nope.
I'm not going to know that.
Nope. I'm backspacing. I'm making an executive decision. Not going to ask that question. But what I am going to do is I'm going to piggyback off of that because you say me ha quedado muy bien o muy rico. I'm going to say another very similar use of quedar is you can say me queda bien o mal, but in the context of when you're talking about a person, if you're saying Sean, me queda bien, Andres, me queda muy bien, you're saying they made a good impression on you, or you like them. So it's saying that you like them, but it's really more with the emphasis put on them doing something to impress you. They have done something. It's like they did the action. You're not doing the action.
That they rubbed off on you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We don't say like he rubbed off really well on me, but you can rub off bad on someone.
Yeah,
and then the way they rubbed off, right?
Yeah, if you rub someone the wrong way, that would definitely be quedar mal. It just sounds weird to say to rub the right way. Well, that sounds very sexual. I can rub someone the right way.
I think there's a different way to translate that.
Yeah, that's a different word. That's a different use of quedar. But anyway, yeah, quedar bien o mal, if you're talking about a person, that means to rub the right way, the wrong way, or to make a good impression.
Okay.
Andres?
So get ready to have your neurons go on firework mode, because I'm just going to give you another one that means this is now 3 in a row that sound the exact same, but they all mean something different, right? Just to recap, you got me queda rica, and that's like it turned out really good, but it was mine. Let's not forget that. And then That's the whole point of the way that they speak in Spanish. One day we'll do an episode about that. Then what Mike just said was me queda bien, and that's referring to the person, kind of like making a good impression on him at first. And now we're going to say me queda again, but it's esta camiseta me queda grande. Or me queda bien, but it's like it fits me well or it suits me in some way.
Yeah.
All right? And you can use that far beyond just clothing. But I feel like by and large, yeah, it's actually just like, never mind. Wouldn't you limit that more or less like shoes, clothes? I was thinking for a second that it's expensive.
I'm thinking about like if you bought a new car and you're in the new car and you're like, te queda muy bien. I feel like that would sound weird to say, even though that suits you.
Te pega bien.
Te pega. Okay, so that would be, so it does seem probably more clothes than more maybe like very personal items.
Yeah.
Maybe like like what about a pulsera? What about like a bracelet? Would you say te queda bien?
The more we talk about it, it sounds like things that it's just like you can't actually physically try on.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I like that. And then I wouldn't say este coche te queda bien. I wouldn't say that. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell us in the comments if we're wrong. So we're going to backpedal a little bit to another, rather than all these really complicated examples, we're going to go back to another one of the easier examples that you learn like Spanish 1, basically. And that is to be located is talking about like where just something is located in space, where something is located in space. So if I say la alimentación, that's better to say that than the chino. If you say la alimentación queda al lado del bar, you're saying it is located next to the bar. But Andres has some other specific examples that are related to this, but a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, well, it's really just the one, and I would include in my definition of like what this quedar is trying to do is make a comparison of where something is located in space, but it's always relative to something else. So in the sentence, you'll have something like, this is really similar to Mike's, la farmacia queda al lado del super. So the pharmacies is, using just as the verb to be, is next to the supermarket. And then originally I had, it orients us in time, but I think that these can all be kind of bracketed together in more of like an umbrella understanding. So Madrid queda a unas 3 horas de Salamanca. That means Madrid is roughly 3 hours away from Salamanca. Even though in the conversation we've used time to quantify the distance, it's still the
location
that we're getting at is how far away it is.
Yeah. So
it's really no different than saying that it's right next to the supermarket. Well, it's 3 hours down the street.
Oh yeah, exactly. Or it's a 5-minute walk. It's how far away are you from the supermarket? You could say I'm 300 meters, or you could say me queda a 300 metros, or me queda a 5 minutos. You could say it's 5 minutes away. So I feel like it's the same thing to talk about how long it takes you to get there as to say, or it's very, very similar to say how long it takes you to get there and how physically far away the distance is.
So what we're saying is feel free to play with the metrics and the increments. Go wild. Have a day.
Yes, absolutely. So what else you got, Andres? I got one more thing, but that's, I don't know when you want me to say.
I got another one, and this is what I promised to bring up in this episode. This is like the inspiration for the episode, but we're not going to get too much into it. Probably there's not so much to be said. In fact, let me just tell you. So the after effect of something on something else. You're probably going, oh my God, man. But really, that's all it is. And it was linked nicely with verbs of change, and it's going to end up being to be again in our translation. But I'll give you an example. Tras el accidente, el chico se quedó paralizado. Right. So after the accident, here's the event. El chico, the boy, se quedó paralizado. He ended up, or he was paralyzed. And so that's the after effect taking place on the thing. And so whenever there's like a direct consequence of a previous event, they so often rely on quedar instead of to say ser. They won't just say that he was paralyzed, because this verb for them doesn't imply any cause or linkage between those two things. But in English, we say like, yeah, well, this happened, and then he was that. Well, we can like hear in that verb that these two things are united. So when you have a sentence like this, go back to quedar. No, quedarse.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I've got a more elaborate example sentence for you. Me quedé asombrado cuando el chico pegó a la mujer y se llevó su bolso. Whoa. All right, so I was like totally astonished when the guy hit the woman and then stole her bag.
I would be astonished too.
Yeah. All right, that cleans up everything on my end, Mike. I think you can take it away.
Okay, so I've saved my absolute favorite / maybe not so favorite for last. This is the one that really opened up a whole new world of Quedar for me. I guess let me just say what it is and then I'll explain it. I remember the first time I heard haber quedado, it confused the crap out of me. Because, well, the context I heard it in was hemos quedado a las 6. This is back when I was giving private lessons to a woman in Segovia, and then we were talking about when we were going to meet up later that day, and that was very confusing to me because I know that hemos quedado, that's talking about the past, that's the present perfect of haber quedado, and then so that's talking about the past though, but if we're going to hang out in the future, my understanding of quedar was like, to hang out. That's another also definition of quedar, is just to hang out. But when she said hemos quedado, that confused the crap out of me because it's talking about the past, but we hadn't hung out yet. And so at the end of everything, this is probably a big Leo. This is probably a big, I'm not saying this very well. But at the end of everything, if you say hemos quedado, it is almost all the time talking about making plans to hang out and not actually the hanging out itself. So if I say to you, hemos quedado a las 6, well that means we have made plans. We have arranged to hang out at 6. That doesn't mean we have hung out at 6. But there's another Leo in here. This one gets very complicated because it can also just mean we have hung out. If you say it without the haber, if you just say quedamos a las 6 ayer, you really can mean either we did hang out at 6 o'clock yesterday, or you can mean we had plans to hang out at 6 o'clock yesterday. And this kind of goes back to a common theme with Quedar, is this verb has so many different definitions, you really have to rely a lot on context.
What would you say if I told you that we were only just getting warmed up? But there's still more meanings.
I thought you said you were done. I thought you had said you were done.
I didn't turn the page.
Oh my goodness. Oh boy, this is going to be a real long episode.
All right, so buckle up or unbuckle if you care to leave. Exit the vehicle. This is your chance. But look, I only got 2 left anyways. So this means to keep, and you're going to want to keep this in the forefront of your mind because it's really useful and took me a long time to learn. But you can use quedar in the reflexive way with the preposition con, and it means to keep something. So, for example, Mike, tú puedes quedarte con mi libro. That means you can keep my book.
Thank you, Andres.
Yeah, and then I'm going to get straight into the next one. This means to pull somebody's leg or to mess with someone. And I like this one. I just learned it today, all right? And I don't know if I should even be telling you guys this, right? It took me like 12 or maybe longer, 12 years at least to find this out on my own. Anyways, no te das cuenta de que se está quedando contigo, right? You say it a little bit ironic. It's like, come on, man. Are you blind? Because he's messing with you. He's pulling your leg. Quedarse con alguien. All right, and I promise that's a wrap.
Oh man, guys, we really appreciate you sticking around. We know it's very complicated stuff, but who better to go through this with than the Dos Guiris? I can't think of any two better guys, you know? So we loved having you here. I hope you loved having us. Espero que te hayamos quedado bien. I hope that we have rubbed you the right way. We've made a good impression.
Vale, chicos, hasta pronto y hasta la próxima grabación. Nos vemos.
Venga.